يا هلا 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 حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. It's a Saturday morning. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the program. As always, great to be with you and a great lineup of guests talking about very varied topics. We're going to be looking at the Junior Achievers South Africa. We're also going to look at the anonymous school reporting app, then transhumanism with flux trends. But right now, our guest hails all the way from France. She was born and brought up in France. She moved around and then eventually a couple of years ago came to South Africa, is working at Wits University. She's a doctor of anthropology and she's here to talk to us about the Mandela Children's Project. She is Dr. Rihlat Saeed Mohamed. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Lovely to have you here and I do hope you're enjoying our beautiful country.
Lovely country. Thank you very much.
So you're here for keeps?
Yeah.
Lovely. You're a doctor of anthropology, you've landed a job at Wits and you are now currently working on this project. Talk to us a little bit about your previous work and what's brought you to South Africa to work on this and other such projects.
So I started with my PhD working in Africa and I was based in Cameroon where I was doing a study trying to understand why some children are simultaneously stunted, which means that they're short for their age and means that they've been undernourished, but at the same time they're overweight, which is also linked to nutrition. So I worked there and my studies led me to have that PhD and trying to understand what are the factors, including family factors, socioeconomic factors, but also related to their biology that lead them to have that status, which is kind of harmful for their growth and later health. So once I've done my PhD on that, I was interested in working on what we call a cohort, meaning a population that we follow from birth all the way through their growth and they become adults to better understand the effect throughout the life course of several exposures that we have in our environment. And I find that exciting opportunity with my research unit now, the Developmental Pathways for Health Research Unit at Wits University, where they had that long-standing birth cohort in South Africa, in Soweto, the well-known cohort birth to 20.
We're going to talk about that in detail, but let's just get back to your work in Africa.
Yeah.
And I find it absolutely fascinating, the study you did on these children with stunted growth, but at the same time they were obese or overweight.
Yes.
Once you've done with a study like that, are there suggestions put in place in terms of their future health and well-being, or to put something in place in that community to prevent future generations from presenting the same type of problems?
So as researcher, what we are committing to is to, of course, publish our research. So make it available not only to our peers as researchers, but also to the government and to policymakers, if you like. So which I did with my PhD.
Which is up to them to then institute
Exactly.
changes.
Exactly. So it's how do we raise their awareness toward this kind of issues and how we communicate to them the issues. In Cameroon, I was working with an institution that is part of the government called the Nutrition Institute. And that made the link between my research and the government, or at least the policy makers. And then it's up to them to escalate my findings or our findings to a more policy kind of output.
Obviously, when you're immersed in work like this,
Yeah.
it has attachments or impacts on you. And once you move away, do you kind of ever wonder or try and make contact to hear what has happened in that area of the work that you were busy involved in?
Yeah, we always, we first of all, when we work in Africa, coming from France, we need to build collaboration and even more kind of friendship with our peers in sub-Saharan Africa. So we get these collaborations going on, and they don't stop with my PhD, of course, or other students' work, but this collaboration, we try to bring them along and build on the studies that we do. So for instance, I finished my PhD in 2011, but I went back 2 years ago and met with my colleagues there and talked about what we could do to further the research that I've been doing there around children and growth. Yeah.
And hopefully the findings of the research will improve the condition of that community or those children going forward. That's the hope, obviously.
And that's the aim. It's to find how we can, once we've said that, once we find that these children are undernourished or malnourished, and once we find the objective reasons why they're like that, the aim as researchers then to implement interventions or to think through what are the feasible solution, respecting the culture, respecting the beliefs of the community, to help them kind of overcome these issues.
Why anthropology?
I think, funny enough, I started by doing ecology, which is more about animals and nature, but I find myself interested in humans and interested in understanding why we're going through some diseases. And through my training, I understood that a lot of our behaviors are also, are also led by our cultures and how our belief system. So anthropology is essentially understanding how the human diversity in terms of culture, in terms of biology, in terms of social structures, and
the political situation in the current space as it's playing out, the impact on those different communities.
Exactly. And all these, what we tend to forget is all these factors have an effect in our health. So we literally embody everything that is happening in our community through our health. So that's why I went to anthropology, because I wanted to understand how what we live and our experiences may affect our health.
Mm-hmm. Let's come to the Mandela Children's Project. Now, almost 30 years ago, a few researchers like yourself, though you weren't involved at the time, but like-minded people took on this very ambitious study, and they decided to follow about 3,500 children, urban South African children from birth in South Africa up to the age of 20. But as I'm understanding, it's going to go even beyond 20. What was the reason for this study to be undertaken, and what do you believe? We'll try and unpack as much as we can, because I find this very fascinating, and I just want to know what was the forward plan thinking, is the type of information that's going to be gleaned from the study and how they're going to put it to good use.
Yeah. So I think the aim of those few researchers so this study started essentially in 1989. So that's the end of the apartheid regime.
That's right.
That's the beginning of democracy. And like I said, the interest is to understand how all this is going to affect the population, the new generation. So what this group of researchers thought of is, let's start a birth cohort, meaning let's follow the kids that are going to be born now and see how they're going to grow and develop in this transitioning society in South Africa, in an urban area. And we know that from that period, many changes happened demographically, socioeconomically, but also the way people were eating and all these things, and trying to follow and see how that will in fact impact the new generation. So the forward thinking was, at the beginning, for 10 years, let's see how they grow in the first 10 years of life. And they find that, okay, this is the way they grow. Some grow better, some grow less better. What are the causes of that living in Soweto? What are the factors that impact the growth? And after 10 years, they find funding, because funding is always something critical in research, and they manage to follow them up to 20. And recently, we still actually seeing them, because they're still coming at our research unit. They're now 28 years of age.
Okay, we're going to an ad break. What I do want to talk about interventions, if you find a very disruptive influence in those children's lives, and hence, 20 years passing, the further tracking of these children. Absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
Let's go for an ad break. Dr. Mohamed is in studio talking about the Mandela Children's Project. It started way back in 1989 and it is still ongoing. And she's going to tell us what they found up to now and how they move forward as far as this study is concerned. Don't go away. Lots more to come on the show this morning. Dr. Mohamed is a doctor of anthropology. She's talking to us about the Mandela Children's Project. It started way back in 1989. The kids have just reached their adult years, and we're going to hear how the study is going to be ongoing. Now, just before the ad break, I asked you about interventions. The children that are chosen for the study, how many are chosen? How are they chosen? And in terms of interventions, if you find a very disruptive factor playing out in a particular child's life, are you able to intervene? Are you able to better the situation, or is that going to skew your study?
So for your first question, how they choose back then the children was basically they took all the clinic in Soweto, and they recruited all the mothers that agreed to be part of the studies, and they included their children as they got born. So that's how they chose them. So we took all the children basically.
And I should imagine there's an incentive in place for the parents as well, because there'd be issues around time that they need to spend with the researchers, etc. So you need to incentivize them as well.
So ethically, with research, we're not allowed to incentivize.
Okay.
So it's out of people goodwill and understanding of what this research may bring to the community.
Sure.
So it's actually very altruistic from our research participants to be part of the study. They're giving their time. Also, there's some very personal information to us. So then when it comes to what happens when we find some disruptive information on the children, so what we do a lot of measurements, biological measurements, whether it's taking blood, whether it's measuring the body and the components of the body. If we find, for instance, that one of our participants is presenting some symptoms, the only thing that we're ethically entitled and allowed to do is to refer them to a clinic, because ourselves as researchers are not doctors, as in medical doctors, so we can't prescribe and we can't intervene.
So I'm thinking a very disruptive social home life, or perhaps the child then presents with a dreaded disease.
Yeah.
Ethically, you're not allowed to intervene at all because it's going to skew your study.
It's going to skew our study, but also we don't have those skills. So the only thing we're allowed is to refer to social workers to get them back into the system that exists in South Africa. So that's what we do. We refer them to hospital, we refer them to social worker or to psychologists for those that we find have some distress or present with some depression. So that's what we have to do for our participants.
How do you communicate to these children that they're part of a study, and how important is it for you to gather all of this information? And do they cooperate, and do they understand the importance of the work you're undertaking? Do they ever resist the questioning, and how often do you interact with them?
So for the Mandela's children, we've been interacting with them at least every year for the last 28 years. So they know very well the context and why we're doing this. They're seeing the outcome. And of course, when they reach 20, we organized a big party for them and took them out. So we try to keep some relations with them. And I think when you run such cohort, they also take ownership of the study, and they kind of understand what's happening because they're seeing the outcomes. They also seek for some advice to us, which we're limited in terms of providing them, but we're trying to also orientate them. So it becomes a kind of relation that has to be within the limit of the research that we're doing, but also that we need to also entertain if we want to continue collaborating with them. They become owners of the study.
How many children or young people are now involved in this study, and they do understand that there's nothing in it for them apart from perhaps their social responsibility bit, that they're going to be hopefully making a difference. Whatever the finding shows, it's going to perhaps better future generations' lives.
So we started with 3,273. And we're now in contact with about 2,500. So meaning we know we have their contact numbers or we know where they are.
Reason for the dropout?
So some of them, unfortunately, have died. Some of them have some circumstances. Some are in prison, for instance. Some have moved away from Soweto and live in other regions. So that's the main reason why they drop out. The others are within the Gauteng province, and we try to find them the best we can. But most of them that are not in the study have migrated, for instance. So, yeah.
At the end of the study, when is it ending? Or are you going to track them for life?
As long as we have funding, we're trying to attract them.
So at some point, or I should imagine there's certain milestones you reach, and you've got to make the findings, you've got to present the findings to the funders.
Exactly.
They then will decide how they move forward with the information, if they're going to do anything with the information at all. But for the participants, we know that there's nothing in it for them apart from social responsibility. But do you believe that their profile is perhaps raised in a certain way? Let's assume they go for study or for jobs and put that on their CVs. How does that hold them in good stead?
So again, I'm going to go back to ethics. Ethically, we're not allowed to identify them in any sort. So for us,
but if they want to make that information
available, they could, and they can put that in their CV. We provide them also with certificates saying that they are part of the study and they've been contributing to the research and etc. We give them those kind of certificates that they can then use them to value their CV or their career, or so we provide that kind of support in a way to them, and and I think they've been using it to their benefits, I hope.
28 years later, what is the study showing you? What is the findings reflecting up to now in terms of life in general? Aspirations, dreams, hopes, opportunities, job opportunities, study, socio-economic situations, and I'm sure you track all of that. What is it showing us?
So the interesting fact with these children is, like you said, they're doing better than the average will say, because maybe they've been in contact with us. This is where the bias comes. But what we found is most of them have matric, and now at 28 we're busy calling them back at our research facilities to ask them about those questions you're asking: aspiration, educational attainment, employment, what are the difficulties that they're experiencing. So in order to see how they're doing now that they're young adults and they need to go and further their life as adults and parents, because a lot of them are already parents actually. So that's one thing. In terms of the 28 years, what we found is that a lot of the mothers, when we started the study, 50% of them were single mothers, so without their family and with a poor socio-economic background back in 1990. But the interesting thing is these families find support through other members of their family, through the community, or they choose to migrate as well to provide their kids with better education, with better health. So they find ways to cope with that poverty and socioeconomic kind of inequalities that is going on. The other finding that we had and we're proud of in Birth to 20 is showing that kids start smoking very early, and that has helped as well to kind of push a little bit the policies around smoking and age cutoff for selling cigarettes.
Do you know why they start to experiment so early?
So in our jargon, that's what we call risky behaviors, and they enter into the adolescence period, which we know in essence is related to that kind of risk boys, girls start experiencing, and one of the things that they experience is smoking cigarettes. So they're not regular smoker, but we know that they're starting already experiencing that. So, yeah.
We've come almost to the end of the interview. Is the study or the results of the study reflective of the broader South African society?
I think it give it give it justice to what is happening. We're seeing, for instance, one of the core of our research is about the development of obesity and cardiovascular diseases in South Africa, and we see in our sample already that more than 50% of the girls are either overweight or obese. We're seeing the first signs of kind of diabetes symptoms. We're also seeing that some of them experience some difficulties when it comes to finding employment and things like that. So it kind of reflects what is happening.
Finally, 30 odd years ago or 20 odd years ago, HIV and AIDS was the big story here in South Africa. Do you find that's on the decline through your study?
So interestingly, we don't necessarily impose an HIV test to our participants in the Mandela's Children, but if they want to, we provide them with that. So the rates of HIV AIDS in our participants is very low. So which is, in a way, we're questioning, is it because they've been in contact with us regularly, or is it because there is also some behavioral changes and that reflect what is also happening in the society?
That's where we'll have to leave it. As fascinating as it is, that's all we have time for. Thank you so much for being with us and giving us a peek into your world. And there you have it. Approximately 2,000 children have been tracked by way of this study from their birth, and they will be continued to be tracked till they decide to opt out of the program or till they die. But of course, it's very, very valuable information for policymakers and governments alike. Don't go away. We are now going to be joined by Flux Trends, talking about artificial intelligence and a whole host more. Welcome back. Bronwyn Williams from Flux Trends is in studio to talk to us about artificial intelligence and a whole host more. The kind of stuff that is really futuristic. I was looking at the notes and thinking, this is the kind of stuff that I expect to roll out in the year 2050. But hey, it's on our doorstep. Let's talk more about transhumanism, AI intelligence, robotics, and gosh, the mind boggles, a whole host more. Bronwyn, good morning. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Lovely to have you here. Now, I know you've been with Flux Trends from about 2011.
Yes.
Obviously a fascinating company to work for and to work with, because the kind of people and the kind of thinking that happens in those spaces is the kind of stuff that we as ordinary everyday people don't encounter. How do you keep up with all of that?
Well, we spend a lot of time reading, a lot of time meeting very interesting people, everyone from university professors right down to just people on the ground to see what's going on. Because with Flux, we're really looking at the intersection of technology with society and with consumer trends, because the two forces are constantly interacting with each other.
Now, I know you've been in studio before. I just absolutely love having you guys from Flux Trends in studio at least 2 or 3 times of the year, just to keep us abreast of what's happening in the world of technology. And it's moving at such a rapid pace that what we might have discussed last year is no longer relevant. We're now talking transhumanism. That's very frightening for 2 reasons. You kind of wonder, you know, what the future holds for us as far as our future generations are going to look like, and also the issue around ethics, morality, and religious beliefs. Talk us through that.
Okay, so transhumanism itself is basically the movement to try and develop superhumans. The movement at its core wants to end human suffering and achieve extraordinarily long lives. So in theory that sounds very lovely.
And beautiful looking people.
Yes, well that will be a subset. Transhumanism is really about ending suffering, and by doing that by eliminating pain, suffering, old age, and all of that. So it sounds very altruistic, but there is definitely a dark side to it.
You're right when you say there's a dark side to it, but apart from the dark side, there's a price to pay for that as well, because we know that because of our wealth these days, lots of people are able to afford a better quality of life.
Correct.
Means that we are living longer, but with living longer, there's another set of challenges or problems that come with it.
Yes, there's massive social and economic challenges that come with longer lives, especially if we look at the way the world of work works at the moment. You work for a certain amount of time and then you retire. Especially if you work for a state institution, you're expected to retire at 65 or 70 or whatever that pensionable age is. And with the fact that millennials, that's the generation that was born in the 80s up until the turn of the century, expected to live to at least 114 in terms of natural lifespans, that would in essence mean that you are spending half your life retired, and that's obviously going to put quite a large burden onto society. If you want to see where we're heading there, Japan's a good case study to look at, because they do have longer lives than a lot of other countries in the world, and they're starting to get to a point where looking after their older people is becoming a social burden, especially since they don't have as many young people coming up behind them. So that's definitely one concern.
You spoke about the darker side of artificial intelligence and the whole issue around longevity, etc. What would that darker side be when we talk transhumanism? We're talking about having this perfect being living to 114 or 140 years. What's that darker side looking like?
Okay, well, when it comes to transhumanism, the big worry here is that people with access to technology and to even genetic engineering would essentially be able to evolve themselves and their descendants into what could really become an entirely different species. They're calling this the bifurcation of the human race, away from naturally selected human beings like you and I into intelligently designed beings that have maybe cyborg modifications, that have been genetically chosen from embryo to be of superior intelligence, superior looks, superior longevity and health. And within a few generations, those engineered humans could be so different to regular human beings that they could actually be defined as a separate species. So that's the scary part of transhumanism.
And it's a reality. We're talking 50 years hence. We can see this playing out, maybe not in our lifetimes, but possibly in our children and grandchildren's lifetimes.
Absolutely. So 3 key technologies really driving this transhumanism, these superhumans, would be starting with genetic engineering. That would be actually selecting and editing embryos and eggs in order to create perfect children. At the moment, this technology is really being used in order to pull out genes that could result in genetic defects in children. So that's well and good. But there are also researchers in China that have started experimenting with the aesthetics of the future children that are born through those eggs. And that's obviously a huge ethical minefield that we really haven't got our heads around right yet. But that's just the first technology moving towards transhumanism. The next one would be cyborgs. So cyborg is really the least scary one. That's the adaptation of our natural bodies with artificial gadgets. So if you wear contact lenses, you could be seen as a cyborg. If you've got a hearing aid, you're a cyborg, a pacemaker. Those are all enhancements that help extend and improve our quality of lives, but they really is sort of an attachment that we put into our body. So I think people are kind of more comfortable with that.
Because that's happening already.
It's happening already.
We're familiar with that.
Yes, exactly. So there's obviously getting into more and more advanced states of cyborgs. We're seeing things like artificial limbs that can actually be attached to amputees' arms that can be controlled by that amputee's brain, just through their thought waves. So that's very exciting, and that's really good for people that have those sort of issues. But that sort of leads us to the next phase of technology, which is once again quite scary, and that would be brain neural interfaces. So that's really connecting our thoughts and our brains with the internet. So it's almost being seen as the internet of people. So leading on from those sort of bionic limbs that can be controlled by your mind, we're seeing technology whereby people can control gadgets using their brainwaves even in a different room. They've even taught apes in research labs to control spare pairs of hands that operate for them and gather bananas for them and bring them back to that animal's enclosure. So brain neural interfaces are quite interesting. The sort of technology we're looking at now can even now implant ideas in people's heads. So if 2 people are connected to a brain neural interface, scientists have found a way to convert a thought into text and then convert that text back into a message that can be read by the other recipient's mind on the other side. So that's very futuristic, and it's still in very early stages, but it is happening.
When you say very futuristic, 100 years from now, 50 years from now?
Well, the futurists that we follow and the research that we're looking at is seeing more between 2030 and 2050. They're saying that helmets that can control objects can already be bought now, actually for quite a low price on Amazon, but they're very limited in their functionality. But they're seeing sort of direct connections through a gadget that or a device that we'd wear as maybe a headband or a hat could be quite commonplace by the 2030s. But then we've got our even more futuristic futurists like Elon Musk saying we should going to have things like actual chips implanted in our brains that can give us, in essence, an upgrade by around about 2050. Those technologies are also in infancy, but they're already being used to do things like treat post-traumatic stress disorder or depression in patients, whereby they implant electrodes or electric chips into patients' brains to try and control those faulty brain waves that are giving patients suffering.
That sounds absolutely amazing as far as the health and well-being of humans is concerned. But that also then poses another issue. Are we going to be needing as many healthcare professionals as we have or would need in the future, because you have all of these types of chips and all this technology to fix all these broken people or all these people, these problems, then you're not going to need that. And I know in a previous discussion, we also spoke about the jobs that are being offered and are in demand today will no longer be in demand in 5 years' time. So in the future, 20 years' time, the mind boggles. What type of jobs are they going to be available and in demand? And that then also brings the schooling and education into question. What's that scenario looking like? So I've thrown a whole host of questions at you, and you also wonder about the whole education system, the whole healthcare system, and costs and implications.
Yes, well, to start with professions in the medical space, at Flux Trends we very much see that the jobs of the future are hybrid jobs. So they're jobs that blend different skill sets. So a doctor in the future won't just need to know how to treat your natural body, they might also need a thorough technological and robotics understanding to help you work with the cyborg implants in your hearing aids. They're already having to develop these sort of engineering skill sets, but we really see that sort of hybridization of skills as being a key for the future. In terms of where the job opportunities are going to come from.
All right, hold that thought. We'll come back right after the ad break. Bronwyn Williams is here talking to me about transhumanism, artificial intelligence, robotics, and what our future is going to look like. I actually think I'm glad I'm not going to be around to see all of that unfolding. I'd rather leave it to the younger generation. Don't go away. We'll be back with you in a minute or two to talk some more transhumanism, artificial intelligence, and lots more. Welcome back. We're talking future technologies, and I interrupted you just before the ad break. What's the education scenario going to look like? You explained the medical field briefly. Are we going to need schools and universities in the future?
I see that the way we're currently doing schooling is probably not going to be sufficient for people that are going to live extraordinarily long lives. We really have to get used to the idea of constant education and re-education. If you know about geology, it's like a half-life of certain atoms. You know, that means that they decay at a certain rate, and the half-life of our skills is increasing. So whatever education you got won't be enough to last you through your entire life. You're going to have to reskill and retool multiple times throughout your life.
Because it's going to be irrelevant a couple of years down the line.
But it's just a case of shifting our mindset. So instead of seeing schooling as something you do up until the age of, say, 21, and then you get your university degree and that's it, you know, move on to working instead of learning, we're just going to have to shift our mindsets to a continual process of working and learning throughout our lives. That's actually quite exciting, because learning new things is fun if you're learning interesting things. And the sort of work that we're going to have in the future is going to be more interesting work and less mundane work.
Okay, so you talk about bounty work as well. Is that what you're alluding to?
Not really. Bounty works a little bit different. Bounty works more the new sort of way we're going to have employment contracts. In terms of the skills we need, that's going to be something where we get used to this constant pattern of learning and relearning. And then we've also got to get used to the shift about the way we're going to get paid and the kind of contracts we're going to have with companies. If you want to look at the generations, that's quite a simple way to get your head around that. I know generations and generational studies tend to be a bit stereotypical, but they are helpful for putting things into categories to wrap your head around. So if we look at the baby boomer generation, that was the big generation that was born just after the World Wars. They had very much a salaried life. So you would get your qualification, you'd go work at a particular company, you'd earn your salary, and when you were 60 or 65 years old, you got your golden handshake and your watch and your nice cushy pension. That was the sort of salary work, the employee-employee relationship that we're most familiar with. Then along came the millennials, who started working in the early 2000s. And millennials have really spearheaded the freelancer or the gig economy way of working. So LinkedIn, the employment platform where you can go look for work and put your professional qualifications up, that social network, says that up to 40% of their profiles are going to belong to non-salaried gig or freelance workers by 2020. So that's just right now, right around the corner.
Non-salaried, how are they going to get paid? Is it some sort of a barter deal that's going to be in place?
Well, just with the gig work, that is very much contract-based. That would be all your freelancers. Anyone who works on a contract base, anyone who works as a freelancer, so say a graphic designer that works for one company, does work for another company, and is really basically a company of one. That's what we call the gig or the freelancer economy. But now we're moving into that next phase, which we're now calling the bounty work phase. And this really relates to the Generation Z, which is the generation coming up just behind the millennials. They're the kids that are just getting into university and into the workplace right now. And they're going to find themselves in a world of work where instead of really auditioning for a job like we do when we go through an interview or tender process if you're an employee, or a tender process if you're a freelancer, these kids are going to be going into a world of bounty work where it's not an audition, it's actually a race. So the first person to do the work gets paid. Ooh. It's not a case of being chosen and selected and then doing the work. It's kind of reversed. So an Uber driver would be a good example of this. The first Uber driver, or the closest Uber driver to where the fare is waiting, gets the ride. In the tech space, this is also starting to happen. Google, for example, offers bug bounties. So if you find a bug in their software code, you get paid. If you don't find the bug, you don't get paid. So that's quite exciting if you're very good at your job, but it's very scary if you maybe have got by on your network or your personality or your relationships in order to land work. So it very much means that we're going to be judged more and more on our performance and our output and less on just, making nice and making friends.
But that doesn't mean that the business scenario or businesses as we see it and know it today is going to disappear from the face of the earth.
No, not
You're still going to have a lot of essential services in place.
Absolutely. This doesn't mean that businesses are going to go away at all. It just means that the way that they interact with their staff is going to change. In surveys done throughout all the generational cohorts, all employees value freedom and flexibility most highly. And this really plays against the salaried employee mindset. It means that people are comfortable and getting used to the idea of working as freelancers or bounty workers because they're in control of their own destiny and their own time. If you're a freelancer or a bounty worker, if you want to take a long weekend, you can. You don't need to get permission from your boss because you're not really their property from 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. You choose when you work and who you work for. So it's really about putting control back into people's lives. This makes older generations quite uncomfortable, but younger generations, especially Generation Z, are very comfortable with this.
Because they don't know it any other way.
Exactly.
What is neurodiversity, both in the public spaces and in the workspace? How does that play out, and what exactly does that concept mean?
Neurodiversity is talking about people who have issues such as autism, or people that think and talk and understand a bit differently to the rest of us, people with Asperger's, autism, all of those sort of cognitive differences. And they require different spaces in order to feel comfortable and to interact with people because they have really social and behavioral issues. So we're seeing a rise in sort of spaces, particularly in retail centers, that want to give these people space in order to feel comfortable in their environments. many people with neurodiverse issues are highly touch sensitive or very sensitive in all their senses. So they need quiet, or they can get overstimulated. They need space and quiet and time. So shops might have a neurodiverse shopping hour. So you can go to the shopping space with your child if they are autistic, and be able to know that they're in a safe space where if maybe they act out, they're not going to be judged by random shoppers that want to stop them and interfere with them. And also because it's quieter time, they're less likely to have these sensory overload issues.
And I guess with the advent of the strides being made in science and technology, maybe that might not even be a scenario we'd be met with, because there might be cures for all of that.
Yes, they very much could be. I mean, we're talking about approaching the point of amortality, whereby you won't die from natural causes anymore. You would only die from, say, an accident, because in theory, any disease can be curable, even the disease of old age, which is really a biological breaking down process. So we really could be reaching that point.
I'm not sure if I'm excited by what you tell me or whether I'm frightened. I think it's quite frightening. But be that as it may, talk to us about Sophia, the robot citizen. We're going to be seeing many Sophias, aren't we?
Yes, so Sophia is quite a famous robot. She's probably the world's most famous robot. She's spoken at the UN, and she was also the first robot to be given citizenship. And she was given citizenship in Saudi Arabia, which is quite interesting. Yes. But there's also been an algorithm that's been given citizenship in Tokyo. This algorithm was really a chatbot designed for citizens to communicate with their local government. And they decided to give this chatbot a personality of a small boy. And people were now chatting to this bot about what was going on in their lives. And they really became a friend and a member of the community. And they gave him citizenship too. So we're really entering a phase where robots and artificial intelligence and even algorithms and chatbots can start to be given what is currently deemed human rights. But in the case of Sophia and in the case of the Tokyo algorithm, they were very much publicity stunts. They were something quite fun, and they were being done in order to give exposure to the sort of technology around artificial intelligence and robotics. But at a more serious level, the EU is currently exploring what they're calling personhood laws for artificial intelligence. Now, these laws are less about giving robots and algorithms rights than they are about regulating the responsibilities of the people behind that technology. So if you take, say, a self-driving car that's involved in an accident and maybe causes a fatality, at the moment, the owner of that car or the manufacturer of that self-driving car could be sued by the victims. They would have responsibility over that entity. What the personhood laws want to do is transfer that responsibility away from the natural person that owns the technology or made the technology and onto the artificial intelligence itself. So in essence, these personhood laws are very similar to the laws that give companies legal personhood standing in our current legal system.
Sure. I'm not sure I'm excited or if I'm frightened by all of this. I guess it's a mixture of both. The immediate future, we've got about 3 minutes to wrap up time. What does the immediate future look like, and what should we be excited about in terms of ease in our lives?
I think the biggest key that we need to be excited about comes back to that world of work and the fact that it is the boring routine jobs and tasks that we don't want to do that are going to be automated away. So we can look forward to a world of work where our lives are really removed of all those things that bog us down, all those chores that we don't want to do. Because throughout human society, throughout human history, almost all of our inventions that we've come up with have not been designed to replace us as human beings, but rather they've been designed to take away the things that we don't want to do. Even something as simple as the wheel was done so that we could move things more efficiently. So we need to be excited about the fact that our lives should be richer and more fulfilling as machines take away a whole lot of the mundane tasks from our lives.
So we're well entrenched into the fourth industrial revolution.
Absolutely.
And that's where we leave it. Thank you indeed for being with us on the show this morning. That was Bronwyn Williams from Flux Trends, keeping us and bringing us abreast with trends as far as AI, robotics, and all of those weird and wonderful things are concerned. As I've said, I'm not sure if I'm excited or if I'm a bit terrified about the advent of all this futuristic stuff, but I guess we'll just wait and see how it plays out in the future, if we're still around. Don't go away, we still have lots more coming your way on the show this morning. Welcome back, and we now have a young achiever in studio with us. He's about 17 years old. His name is Arif Mouden, and the reason we're talking to him is he is on this very special program called Junior Achievers South Africa, and quite honestly, I'm not surprised that he's sitting in studio with me because his mom, Rukshana Mouden, is quite a high flyer, so not surprised that her son is following in her footsteps. Arif, Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the program.
Salam. Honored to be here.
Lovely to have you here. And is it difficult to follow in mom's footsteps?
Oh, definitely. She sets the bar very high. Definitely.
And is she very hard on you guys? Does she expect you to present results all the time?
Yeah, definitely. She keeps us on our toes.
How do you kind of view it? I'm sure sometimes you get a bit fed up, or you feel you're working way too hard, but when you look at the long-term picture, do you realize that it's really about you and your achievements?
Yes. I enjoy the drive. I enjoy it.
Okay, you're 17 years old and you're on this Junior Achievement South Africa program. Tell us how it happened and how does it involve you? How much time do you need to spend on this program?
Oh, well, this all started in the June holidays where I got introduced to this program. It was a group of teenagers who were the first to build a plane in the world. It was a world record.
That was the Molo Africa project, am I right?
Yes, Molo Africa.
Okay.
And from there were junior achievers facilitators at the program. They were scouting for talent and whoever was the most promising for their program. I was fortunately one of the ones to be picked. Then they introduced me to their program. From there I learned a variety of business skills, entrepreneurship programs, and I was introduced to this competition. And from there I decided to submit my own unique innovation, and it seems like it worked because I got shortlisted for the top 27 in the province.
Congratulations. So you were talent spotted at the Molo Africa project. You guys were building a plane.
Yes.
Did you know that you were being spotted?
No. We were unaware of it.
When they approached you to join the program, what was their opening line and how did you feel about it?
They actually approached me through my mother. They gave her an SMS, and from there I went to the program.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where is it held and what do they cover in the program?
It's held at 4 different locations. The first place it was held in was Curtis Nakondo School of Specialization. We had 4 sessions there. Each session goes over a week, and you have to do it every Saturday of the week. And the second location was Wollamead Academy. Third location will be Nova Primary. A 4th location still unknown. We're not sure yet.
So you're not quite done with the program yet?
No, not yet.
After each program runs its course, do you have to sit in assessment to kind of see how you've done on that particular module?
No, it's sort of a free run thing. We all work at our own pace. The team, we all sit like in teams. So from the students that were picked, we were all put into companies of our own, where we actually have to manufacture a product and sell it. And the facilitators actually, they nurture us, they show us where we're going wrong, how to do certain things.
So your team, what did you come up with? What was the idea? What did you guys manufacture? And at the end of that first phase of the program, what sort of feedback did you get?
Well, our team, our company was named Oracles. We decided to make a bracelet that delivers an electric shock, and it helps people quit smoking, like bad habits. And every time you have the urge to like smoke or do anything bad, you literally just press the button and gives you a zap, and you sort of lose the desire
urge.
to do it, the urge. Yeah. Yeah.
And they embraced that. They thought it was a great idea.
Yeah.
Do you think something like that would go to market eventually?
If we keep on working as hard as we've all been, I feel it's a very promising product. Could work.
How many other people on your group? How big is your team?
Our team's the smallest of the other three. There's only 7 people currently.
Okay. What have you learned so far on this project?
I've learnt a lot. I've learnt how to never give up. They've taught us how to think innovatively, how to solve problems in the community, how to empower the youth. They've taught us how an entrepreneur should think. They've taught us a variety of skills. Yeah.
I'm sure there were times whilst you were on the first, second and third part of this program that you were probably quite frustrated, because you expect people to understand where you're coming from, you expect people to think the way you do, and when you're on a team with different people, you don't always think alike. Were there ever blow-ups, and how did you manage that? Because we're all human, it happens to us.
There's definitely a lot of blow-ups. The reason, I guess, was a lot of us were on edge, things weren't working out a lot of the time, and how we dealt with it was each of us were given a position. Like a normal company would have, you get your general manager, finance manager, human resources, and it was up to human resources to sort of manage all of us, keep us structured moving forward, sort of to direct our creativity so we don't turn on each other. So it was actually quite well structured, our company.
What was your role?
I am finance manager and production manager.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. And were you successful in those roles?
Yes, I was very successful. I built the first prototype we needed, and I've managed our accounting very well.
Wonderful. What do you want to do when you finish school?
I'd like to do 2 things. I'd like to study oral hygiene, become a dentist, and from that I'd like to also become my own employer. I'd love to own my own business as well.
So you're going to merge the two, your own dental practice and your own business. The program that you're on currently, and I know that you're a couple of years away from realizing your dream of becoming a dentist and being an entrepreneur, but how do you believe is going to propel you in achieving those dreams of yours?
Well, I feel it's already helped me a great deal. I've already set my mind on opening my own business. It's driven me, it's given me the motivation I needed. It's given me the mindset needed in order to achieve this goal. And I feel I'm not too far away from it.
And this has cost you nothing. It's just you've walked away with huge benefits.
Yeah.
Would you advise other young people to try and look out for these opportunities? And how do they go out trying to get onto a program like this?
I feel it'll be very beneficial to anyone who'd who'd be on the program, would feel it'll benefit them. Basically, you just need to show that you're very entrepreneurship driven and you got a very good mindset for business. And usually they approach schools every yearly basis, and you should be told this by a teacher or principal about the program.
And express your willingness to join something like
Definitely.
this. We've come to the end of the interview. Your important message to young people watching you this morning?
It would be to never give up on your dreams, no matter how hard it might get, to actually enjoy the hardship, to actually learn how to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, and to just go for your dreams.
Well, like they say, what doesn't kill you makes you strong. We'll be watching you. Congratulations. Your mom should be very proud of you. I think you're an amazing young man, and may you grow from strength to strength. Thank you for being with us.
It's been awesome.
The lovely Arif Mouden talking about his time on the South African Junior Achievement Awards. He's still on the program. He's achieved much, and I think he has a really bright future ahead of him. And like I said, he follows in his dynamic mom's footsteps. Don't go away. We're coming back to you with a telephonic interview to wrap up the show this morning. And we wrap up this morning's show by talking with someone by the name of Mark Hardwick. He's developed an app, and I think it's going to hopefully keep our children safe in the schoolrooms and in the school playgrounds, especially in this day and age when we hear about so much of violence and bullying taking place in the schoolyard. So let's hear why and how Mark has come up with this app, and how's it going to help keep our children safe. Mark, good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you.
Mark, would I be spot on by suggesting that perhaps this app is to keep our children safe in the classrooms and in the schoolyard?
100%, and it's more than that. You know, it's not just about that. It's about them giving them a voice to report on not just things that happen at school, but some children are going home to some very real challenges at home. And so when they go home and they find themselves in a place where they're going home to domestic violence, they're going home to sexual assault, and obviously the challenges at school, which can include bullying, it can include drugs, it can include alcohol, steroids, etc. This is a vehicle or a place where they're able to ask for help, remain anonymous, whether they help people themselves or for their friends.
Very much like perhaps Childline, but this is absolutely at their fingertips, and I should imagine their identities are protected, and there won't be any repercussions.
Well, what it is, it takes the final way the collective function is creating a closed sector. Very often the students that are able to access airtime or make that phone call becomes difficult to get out. Speak to someone that's intimidated. This is a new generation doing things on the phone, being able to send through a message. It makes life so much easier, and they send through the message that goes directly to someone at the school who's able to help them.
All right, who's Mark Hardwick, and why have you decided to develop this app? I'm wondering if you've had a bad experience and you've decided, a bad experience through a loved one, perhaps still at school, and decided enough is enough and we need to do something about this.
Okay, so essentially, no. I was in the child protection unit of the SAP, and essentially seeing that what happens is when one does an investigation, something that is very real, something that is very important through the investigation is the fact that one needs to get a first report statement. So if something happened to me as a child, the first person I'll tell the police need to find that person, and the police need to take a statement from that person. Now, very often when we do these investigations, what we find is that the person that the child told may have been told 3-4 years ago, but they've never come forward and disclosed what they went through or what their friends told them. So when we speak to the first report, we say, "You've known about this for 4 years. Why did you not tell them?" They said, "I didn't want to violate friendship, trust, etc., etc., etc." Now we have a situation where when that person is aware of that, they are able to disclose immediately, and they're able to get that information and get help to their friend.
How are you getting this information out to all the school children? And I know it's a free app and it's easy to download. So let's look at how you're going to get it out into the schoolrooms and importantly, age groups that you're targeting.
Okay, so essentially it's primarily geared for learners within the high school environment because they have a cell phone. So it's going to be someone who has a phone that is able to use it. Yes, we're seeing a lot of interest in primary school as well, but primarily it's a high school learner who obviously, because they have access to the phone.
So if I come across something onerous that's happening in the schoolroom or in the schoolyard and I need to report it, how am I protected against being identified, for example? I want to report this misdeed or this heinous deed, but I don't want to get into trouble.
Okay, so what will happen is you'll have downloaded the app onto your phone. If the school has bought into the project, then you would just select the school that you attend, and you would then be able to send through. If they haven't, then what you would do is you would select my school is now on the list, and then that report will come through to us at The Guardian, and we will contact the school. Once we've contacted the school, or once they've got the report, they will not know the identity of the learner that sent through the report. So let's assume it's a report that says, Mark is bullying me. They don't know who me is, they just know that Mark is being a bully. And so they're able then to speak to Mark and find out what's going on. Maybe Mark is going through a situation where there's domestic violence at home, or there's, mom and dad are going through a divorce or something like that. And that's the reason that Mark is bullying. And so the school is able to deal with the bully in that circumstance. If, for example, what the message the child has sent through it doesn't have enough information. So let's assume the message the child sends through is, I am being bullied. The challenge in that situation is that you don't know who's being bullied, who's bullying them, how they're being bullied. You don't know any of that information. So the school, once they receive that report, is actually able to go back to the reporter. They will never know the identity of the reporter, but they are able to go back to the reporter and say to the reporter, listen, this school doesn't tolerate bullying, but we don't know who you are. We don't know who's bullying you. We don't know how you're getting bullied. Can you give us more information? And the learner is then able to respond, but at no stage will the school know their identity. Additionally, if the learner feels that they have more information that could help the school, do work with they will be able to send in the report a picture, they're able to send a video, or they're able to send a document through with the report so that the school has more information.
Is this app available immediately, and who designed it? If it was you, how long did it take to design the app?
It was probably about 2 years in development. It is available now. It's available on the Play Store. It's available on the Apple iStore. Learners can download it right now. It's for free. They go through a little registration process. It probably took us about 2 years in development, probably about another year in testing. But yeah, we're at a place now where we've got something that is working, and it literally is working in schools right across South Africa. From your top private schools right through to your low-end, impoverished, no-fee paying schools, it is working. Children are getting help now.
That's great. And I mean, if you're saying that it was 2 years in development, obviously that must have cost a fair amount of money to develop the app. But more importantly, this is being rolled out to school children free of charge. So that is truly protecting our children, and moms and dads can have a bit of peace of mind knowing that the child has this device available. If there's a problem, he or she can then just send out a call for help. Do you know at this point in time how many schools or how many learners have downloaded the app, and how many times it's actually sent out an SMS or a call for help?
Wow, okay. So the exact number of schools, I'm not aware. We've had a fair amount of schools that are using the app at the moment. In terms of the number of learners, it's thousands and thousands, tens of thousands. It may be close to 100,000. I don't know. We've got a hell of a lot of learners that have downloaded. In terms of stats, what we're seeing is, within the first week of a school choosing to move forward with the app in their school, most schools get between 15 and 18 reports. We're sitting in a position where over the first half of the year, about 20 to 25% of the learners within the school, now understanding that's 1 in 4, are seeing value in this app, which essentially means over the course of a year, we're probably going to look at about 1 in 2 people seeing value in the app. And then when we look at what is being reported, bullying probably makes up about 30% of all reports that comes through, which is the highest transgression that is reported. It's then followed by drugs, which is at about 22, 23%. And then there is inappropriate behavior by an educator, and then depression and cutting, which is probably at about 10%, and then all the others kind of filter in behind that.
Mark, if convictions have to be made against the perpetrators, would information from the app stand up in court?
Yes, so essentially what would happen is law enforcement would be able to subpoena any information that they may need so that they can use that in their investigation and be submitted for forensic evidence. And if the prosecutor felt that information would be beneficial for successfully prosecuting, 100% is available to be used.
Amazing stuff that you guys have come up with. And are you working on anything in future to perhaps enhance the app and just keep our children safer?
Absolutely. We've got lots of new things that are in development, and those that have the app will see as the months roll on, there's going to be new versions coming out, better things. We're going to be in a position where law enforcement will be able to engage directly with the learners that are at risk. It's really exciting, and it's really, really making a big difference.
Well, good on you and your team. Thank you indeed for this innovative piece of technology which is keeping our children safe. We will keep up with you in the future. Thank you once again. Time for us to wrap up. Thank you for being with us on the show this morning. Hope you've enjoyed it as much as we've enjoyed your company. Till the next time, as always, take care on the roads. A big thank you to the hardworking production team. And as always, it is Assalamu alaikum and Khudafiz from me, Julie Ali.
Ya hala, ya hala, ya hala.